would like to allow, as we go into the departmental reports at this time, for Director Johnson to come and give an update on the emergency vouchers and the waivers that you had mentioned. So, Director Johnson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
But just an update on the emergency housing vouchers. We are still in the implementation stage. We are still collaborating with a number of agencies to establish the roles and responsibilities, as well as the requirements for being an agency who can refer clients over. So we are scheduled to have a meeting next week, next Thursday, just to set everything in place and to be ready for the July 1 start.
Do you have any questions in terms of the?
Yeah. Do we have a formal adoption of an MOU with the COC organization?
No, it's in rough draft form right now. It has not been approved. We being the COC and myself, we're going back and forth on the language in the MOU, but no, it has not been adopted yet.
Will there be any other MOUs with other organizations that provide these services?
Yes.
Do we know who they are?
We won't until Thursday. Thursday is the collaboration meeting, again, where we will discuss the roles and responsibilities and the requirements necessary.
Are you talking about collaboration with the COC?
I'm sorry?
Are you talking about collaboration with the COC?
Not just the COC, just a number of organizations. And I'll provide you with that list of all of the invitees.
There was another question, I guess, about how this impacts the original Section 8 list. That is this also open up to anyone who's presently on the Section 8 list?
The regulation states that we have to send the notice to everyone on our Section 8 list. Keep in mind, we just established a list effective June 11th. So once our software company sets that list in stone, so it won't, if we are audited or anything like that, we can say it was set in stone before we start manipulating anything on the file. Once they do that, and they're in the process of doing that now, once they do that, and once we have established who our contact people are, then yes, everyone on that list will get a letter.
So, TINMAS, I should say MRI, are having to make adjustments to their system to accommodate the emergency vouchers.
No, what we have to do is set up a set of vouchers so that we can easily identify them.
Right.
Separate from our other vouchers. So our finance department is doing that. They're working with TINMAS to do that.
So they got to go in and do some coding now.
The finance department?
No, TINMAS.
No, our finance department just needs to set up a special set of vouchers. Those vouchers will be
So
assigned to those
TINMAS
people.
don't have to do any programming, no modification to that system to deal with the segregation of the emergency vouchers.
No.
Okay, I'll take it with Mr. Delaney when he gets up here. Because from a computer technical standpoint, they can't commingle them with any other voucher.
And we're not commingling.
No, I'm talking about MRI.
What do you mean?
I mean, if it's our responsibility eventually, and you're telling me that they're not making any modifications to deal with any new coding, it's kind of hard for me to understand.
Well, let me just try to make it a little bit more clear. In our system, we have different sets of vouchers. We
Well,
can
we're
have
talking
the
about,
regular
we're talking VMS.
Okay.
I'm
explaining.
talking MRI. I know.
I'm talking MRI, sir. I'm talking strictly MRI.
Okay.
In our system, we can code our vouchers with particular voucher numbers. For instance, our HCV vouchers can be called HCV 001 through
Correct.
whatever the
Correct.
number of vouchers are.
Correct.
Our VASH vouchers will be VASH
Mhm.
1 through whatever.
Mhm.
Our EHV vouchers will be coded EHV 001 through 0086. When, in doing that, you attach that voucher to a line item with funding. And that's how you attach the funding, and that's how you keep them from being commingled. That's how you account for them, based on those voucher numbers.
Yeah, because I know VMS had already, it's supposed to be already set up to do that.
Yeah, but we're not referencing VMS, we're referencing our system to make sure that we can account for each voucher in each program.
Hmm.
Is there any opportunity for someone to directly contact MHA pertaining to their qualifications or if they're eligible for these emergency vouchers?
Well, right now, everything will have to come through, it's mandated that we receive referrals. And so no one could just come into the office and say they want an emergency housing voucher. It has to come through a participating agency. And those are the agencies that we're working with right now.
Do we know what the eligibility really, and I'm sure that's in the public notice, but what the eligibility is for someone who actually has to apply?
Homeless, risk of being homeless, fleeing domestic violence, and sex trafficking. And all of that, per the notice, the COC and the supporting agencies will be responsible for determining which category a person is qualified for.
So how many agencies are we talking about?
Oh, wow. So I can't give you a definite, but I will give you on Thursday's meeting, I'll give you a list of all of the agencies who are willing to participate in the program. Right now, we are just participating with our COC, and that's the only organization right now that we are in collaboration with in terms of an MOU. But we are not limited to the COC, number one, because the COC does not have a coordinated entry system. And because of that, HUD says that we can reach out to other agencies to assist us in getting our applicants.
Because the case management part would fall upon them and not us.
Correct. But we want to be sure that they're doing what they say they would do in that MOU.
Understanding the HUD public notice, have we decided which one of those addendums that we're going to do or not do? Such as the prep services, such as going out and finding, you know, it wasn't mandatory. I mean, it was optional the way I read it.
You mean the units?
No, I'm talking about those additional dollars that if we decide to do so, have we made that decision? Such as going out and recruiting landlords. We can do that with Section 8. We can do that with these,
Right.
but we can do that with Section 8. So I'm saying, have we made that decision? And there are several of them in the notice of which one we were going to adopt or not adopt, because it wasn't mandatory.
Right.
Okay. We are receiving funds for service fees. In that service fees is, it allows us to make incentives to the landlords to get them on board for the EHV vouchers. Again, we are deciding how we want to move forward with that, how much of an incentive we want to offer the landlords. And I am actually working with the city to assist in the landlord outreach.
What about the other addendum items that were in the notice? I mean, have we made a decision one way or another? Such as the, I might not be saying the right word, clean up, prep services that are in this notice. Because a lot of things were voluntary, even though they may have provided funds for it. It's whether or not we decided whether or not we want to do it or not.
Right, and that's where we are. We're trying to decide what's the best use of the funding. It won't be set in stone because what's required for one person may not be required for the next person.
Right.
But whatever we do, we want to make sure that we are in line with that notice. So we are setting parameters. We are setting limits to the amount of money that we will assist with. We are working with our partners so that if they have funding available, for instance, if they have funding available to assist with security deposits or with utility bills, that they cover what they are mandated to cover, and what they are short, then the housing authority will cover for them.
Yeah, because we hadn't made it mandatory, even though that's an option in the notice where we could, but we haven't.
Oh, but we plan on, because we know that will be an issue for our clients. We know that security deposits and utility arrearages will be an issue for our clients. So yes, we do plan to make that available to those people who are eligible.
Because these vouchers have a time frame on it, is in the educational process, are we making sure the clients know that it's just a limited time, that these vouchers are good for, you know, it's for, I think, what is it, 2023?
September 30th, 2023,
23,
if those had news had already been issued.
Well,
Unless
it's
there's
my
additional
understanding-
funding that's provided.
Right.
It's my understanding that the funding will be, HUD will continue to fund those vouchers.
Yeah.
What they mean by 2023 for those vouchers that has not been issued, that they will end, is that if we have not put a person or a body with that voucher, and that voucher is just sitting there unutilized, then HUD will take that voucher back and we cannot reissue it. But we can continue to issue, and HUD will continue to fund those vouchers or those bodies that we placed in units.
Yeah, they come back and recapture it, basically.
Correct. Anything that we have not used by that date, any vouchers that we have not used.
And to be, for clarity, the vouchers, once we get them and issue them, they are indefinite. As
Correct.
long as, you know, just like any other voucher.
Yeah, but that's depending upon the allocation of
Yeah,
funds
yeah,
from Congress.
that's like any voucher.
Right.
Yeah, so it's no different. Once they.
Well, I just want the public to understand clear that if HUD, if Congress doesn't fund them, they're not there.
Yeah, oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And a lot is contingent upon the meeting next week, so we'll actually come back to the board with an update prior to the next board meeting, so that we don't have to wait till the next board meeting to give you an update on what's going on with the organizations and who we reached out to and the MOUs. So we'll send you guys an email in a couple of weeks, right after she meets next week, to update you, so that I know a lot of the questions you have right now can't be answered until after.
So they're also planning and this is a new nuance versus the way that Section 8 does it, the portability issue. Anybody can walk in off the street, they're being referred, and they're not here physically, meaning they're not from this area, they
Correct.
still apply.
Correct.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah, and we have reached out as part of our preparation to a lot of the neighboring housing authorities, Conway, North Little Rock, Hot Springs, Benton, Pine Bluff, in anticipation of possibly porting just here locally.
Right.
Some of those vouchers, you know, the demographics and the actual boundaries.
Mhm.
But we've already started a conversation. Mr. Love, just with as many people as we can to make sure that when we get these 86 vouchers, we want to hit the ground running. We want to get them out. What is the incentive in terms of getting them out quickly?
If we can get the vouchers leased up within the first 4 months, we'll get $500 per voucher. And so that's just an incentive for getting them leased up. It's $250 for anything after that.
Right.
We also get an incentive for, once we do lease the vouchers, that we place the information in the system. So that's another incentive for getting the information in the system and reporting it to HUD. So there's a lot of funding with these vouchers, but everything is happening quickly. But we want to make sure that we are following HUD's guidelines so that we're not later audited and required to pay any monies back.
Thank you, Lord. They don't want to do that. Now, is it an opportunity, if an individual defaults on the voucher, you know, is that voucher then able to be reissued?
Yes, as long as it's reissued before that deadline of 2023. So yes.
Ms. Peterson, you have any questions? She said
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, and appreciate all the coordination efforts you've been putting into this. The finance report,
Gentlemen, before we
Yeah.
leave your report, there were a couple of items in your report that I'm not sure
Okay.
if we're gonna have further discussion. When we looked at other actions, that there have been some conversations regarding the some 21% general partner.
that's, yeah.
And so is this, and some other issues pertaining to the ITEX,
Right.
whatever it is now, going to be discussed?
Yes.
Okay.
That's gonna be discussed in the
Okay.
development, when, Bobkin does his update, because it's very important, and it actually literally just came up in the last 3 to 4 days, to be honest. So I put it in my report, just so you would know that there's been some dialogue and conversation, but yeah, that would have to be covered under the ITEC, update. I'm sure Mr. Bobkin is anxious to update you guys on that. Okay. Moving on to finance, Commissioner Anthony has sent us some things that she had wanted to see in the board packet in terms of finance. Director Delaney did put 2 additional pages at the very end of your board packet that one of the requests was a review of the salaries for the last 3 years. That is in your board packet, the last, very last page, in fact, everything. And then also, I'll have to let him talk. There was one other thing that you had requested that he provided.
Oh, just a comparison between what happened in the last 3 years, okay.
Okay, and Deputy Director Delaney,
Delaney?
do you have any other additional updates or any clarification? And if you have any questions or anything in the board packet, he's here to address any questions you might have.
Yeah,
Mr. Delaney,
come on up, come on down.
in your financial presentation on the 3rd, there were several accounts that were not accounted for, that we were still trying to get information on. Has there been any update as to those accounts, who were on the signature cards, what the history of those accounts were? There were a couple of them were egregious.
In your presentation, you had said still researching.
Right.
So-
Oh, you talking about the bank accounts?
That was mostly, yeah.
Yeah,
You know what, I do have that, I got it upstairs.
Yeah.
Then I can give it to you afterwards or whatever, I can go get it now.
yeah, I think it would be interesting for all of us to see if it impacts our finances, if there's any money in it, what it was used for, what was the history on it, because since they were not being reported on, we don't have a clue what it was.
Yeah, I do, off the top of my head, I do know a couple of them said dormant, and then, we can transfer that money to another account. So I don't think there's a couple of them that we hadn't used in a while.
But do we know what was the origin of what the
Yes.
history had been, of who was
The
writing?
source,
on it?
yeah.
And I don't know offhand, like I said, I know I found the sheet that Ron had did, and he kind of made some notes along those, so I'll share that with you.
Yeah.
But if you could get that to us before the end of our meeting today, that would help us in just understanding why we had so many accounts out there that weren't being reported on.
Yeah, I'll definitely get that to you.
Thank you.
Question. Looking at the bank statements, why are CAC bank statements on MHA? Shouldn't those statements be on a separate page?
But they are, aren't they?
They're not.
Well,
I think that's just the way we presented it. We can change it and put it on a separate page.
It's not like they're combined.
No,
They just
but if I
present
was a person walking in off the street and saw this, I would think it would be all one instead of being separate.
And for the purpose of our CACH meeting, we'd love to have a separate copy.
Okay, and I did give you a separate, I did have it separate when I did my
Yeah, I was just
presentation.
referring just to the bank
But
account.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can start doing it separately.
Okay.
Yeah, bank accounts are just running.
That's
We just sent you all of them so that you could
Mhm.
have.
I understand.
But I see what you're saying,
I
but,
understand.
so we'll separate it and make sure it in the reporting format. Any other questions?
yes, sir.
What? Go ahead, brother.
Well, I want to talk about the audit for
Okay.
our plan for 20 audit.
The plan is they've been here, and they've actually started on the uniform guidance side, in which they focused on HCD and kindly provided them everything they needed as of today on that one. Me and Tamara is focusing on the 2020 financial audit, And we've been getting stuff from, answering their request, and
Okay.
giving them information.
So they're in the process, we are in the
From our side,
process.
yeah.
We
And
we don't,
they don't wanna be premature, cause we have to procure them. We have to re-procure them.
say again now?
We have to
They
re-procure
don't have a contract.
them.
Right, okay.
So
Well, that's,
so,
okay.
That's
So
the-
where
yeah.
are we on that?
yeah.
What we gonna do?
We are, it should be on the website. It's
You
the
have to procure those
solicitation.
services.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to re-procure them.
Yeah,
And so that's why, until they get a formal engagement letter, or we
Right.
go through the procurement process, we don't even want to
Okay.
assume
Okay.
that it will be them. And they have been doing this for so long, they just wanted to kind of like get a head start on the
But
process.
we don't wanna give the appearance that we're favoring
Right,
anybody.
that you, right, exactly. So that process, again, we try to get ahead of the game in terms of getting the numbers together, but legally, we cannot assume
got
that
you.
it's gonna
Okay.
be BKD. Any other questions, Commissioner Lindsey? on the
Yeah,
finance?
and this goes back to the report that you provided us. You had mentioned, meeting with the property managers and, discuss budget reduction and that sort of thing. So how's that coming?
I've already met with them. I've met with Ivan, to talk about Sunset and Central Stevens, and I've already met with, Candy, and I talked about, Elm Street.
So it's
Yeah, so they
ongoing.
got a better understanding of the process and what they need to do, and how they need to monitor their properties, so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Anything else?
Got anything, Ms. Peterson? All right.
Do
Let
we
me-
have uniforms for us?
You're still looking over the financials.
Yeah. We have uniforms, or is it rugs or paper towels, or what does that corporation provide for us?
Sent us.
Is it uniforms, is it rugs, or what exactly do they
I
provide?
think
for
it's,
us?
It's a uniform for the maintenance folks. Maintenance folks.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause some of them charges, I begin to wonder.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the legal updates, I do have a couple more updates. The very last item on your legal update, the Perry versus MHA, that is a fair housing investigation. We did provide them with all of the requested information, and they have acknowledged that we've been cooperative and given them the information. No decision has been made. And last month, I believe we reported that there was a settlement with Ms. Arnett, who had a case. I do have to come back and report that even though the settlement was negotiated, that it has not been executed, so it's still in limbo.
What about the settlement of the case you just mentioned?
The Perry versus, no, that's still in the works. We're still providing information. It's a EEOC complaint. Make sure, yeah, fair housing. It's a fair housing. No, it hasn't been settled. In fact, we
I
just.
mean, has it even been offered?
No, because we did, right now, we're just responding to requests for information. We don't want to make any offers. We got that request like 2-3 weeks ago, the one that we responded to, where we pulled out all the information. We just gave it to them, like, last week. So no offer has been made.
So basically, they're doing interrogatories.
Yes, that's all that's happening right now, and I don't want to make an offer until we see.
What does, it said discrimination, Ms. Perry believes she was discriminated against on the basis of familiar status. What is that?
Actually, I'm not at liberty to discuss the
Okay,
legal
all right.
matters. Right now, that would have to be something that if you
Yeah,
want
but
to.
you just wanna know what familiar,
Yeah.
me and you have familiar status, okay?
Just
'Cause
like
I've
you
been
know
knowing
each
you
other.
for so long,
Yeah.
And it wasn't
okay?
disclosed.
Right, it
Prior
wasn't
to,
disclosed.
yeah.
That relationship
Yeah.
wasn't disclosed.
Wasn't disclosed.
Yeah,
Alright.
I don't know exactly the details of who knew who and the familiarity. And
With
Ms.
who or what.
Wineland has
Alright.
asked that we don't actually delve into details of legal matters,
Yeah, that's what that is.
Okay. So that concludes the legal. Do you have any questions on the procurement
The
section? That was-
procurement,
Yeah,
I
let me see.
had forwarded a copy of our proposed, revision of our procurement policies to each one to all the commissioners to look at and to review.
Okay.
And then if you can look, huh?
You for it?
I did.
No.
Yes, I did.
No.
I will do it again.
No.
No. Did you do you have it?
No.
You don't have it?
Oh,
No.
somebody got it.
I'd like to make one
Uh-oh.
suggestion though.
Okay.
And like I
No, we
said
hadn't seen
before,
that one.
we adopt that entire 200 and we don't
Well-
adopt pieces of it because
100.
CFR 200 also deals with grants, okay? It deals with more than just procurement. It deals with audits. So that's why I make the suggestion we need to take the entire thing instead of just that small niche of procurement to go with it because it affects so much of what the agency does.
Okay. I will
Take
forward
it.
it again to everybody for their review. And also, I had requested a list of all of our current contracts. I didn't get it this time, but hopefully I'll get it and then we can review it.
Don't
at
forget
our
the
next-
ones that we're paying maintenance fees on.
Every
as well.
contract, I asked for
Yeah.
all of them that we
Even
have.
though it may be expired, we still paying those maintenance fees on it.
Okay.
And of course, we will update the procurement policy. That is the responsibility of the Board of
Board,
Commissioners.
yes.
Okay.
A quick update on the kiosk,
Excuse me.
the, Director Jones
Mm-hmm.
has interviewed two companies, Datamax and Dynatouch. We know that's important, but he is working with them. We had a little bit of a distraction. As you guys know, our system crashed, so that kind of, we had to focus all our effort and all hands on deck on getting our system back up. We actually lost emails and lost ability to even send and receive emails for about a week, and that's a long time. So we had to divert our efforts to that, to bringing our system back up. And I understand your concern about why didn't we have a virus protection and a lot of other issues that came up through this process that we definitely are now addressing, so to make sure that that doesn't happen again, and other precautionary measures in terms of regaining our control over our IT
Well, not only
processes.
that, I know a couple of systems up there, what we call RAD. What that is array of independent disks for backup purposes. We've got all these major scattered sites, and I guess I'm an old IT type of guy, but we should have at least what we call 3 different types of setup, okay? We should have a cold site, meaning we just got a machine in the corner, we're doing
Backup.
nothing, okay? We should have a warm site, meaning at least it's up and running, but we don't have everything on it. And we should have a hot site, meaning that if something should happen here, it's just a thing of pulling out the disks or the hard drive, swapping them into another one. So maybe going forward, that'll probably be something that has to be discussed.
Oh, we're definitely, we don't ever want to be vulnerable and exposed the way we have been in the past, so. we
Yeah, I
are
mean, you could
looking-
put one over at the towers, you could put one down in Cumberland Manor. I mean, we've got enough broad enough site that I don't think if a major disaster hit, knock on wood, that it would knock out everything.
Yeah, yeah. We're definitely planning now that we have Kedrick Jones with us. He's been very helpful with us to iron through this transition from what we had in the past.
And I guess that's a concern because, right now, overall, nationally, we're dealing with hackers and everybody going into everybody's system.
Mhm.
And certainly, we are that vulnerable, because whether or not we put that protection in. But anytime someone was managing the system for as long as the past individual was, I'm concerned whether or not our system has been scrubbed appropriately to make sure that we've done everything that we can to prevent a virus at any given time exploding that has possibly been planted over time. And that's not accusing, that's just saying there's a possibility that there could be a virus still there because, again, we had, that was like having an employee that we had for so long that ran our system. And now that that person is no longer there, are they truly, truly shut out from the system? And are they truly, are we clean of any viruses that might be in that system?
Well, see, that was one of the things that I had mentioned and really didn't like, was that those who were in executive management, that their emails be forwarded to another individual. I said, no, just delete the whole account. If they want to email to somebody, email it to them, but never have like piggyback forwarding emails, and never have like that, because that leaves a open door vulnerability that I'm not willing to take.
Okay. Well, we have a new IT guy, as you know, and he's been doing a fantastic job of just addressing all of your concerns, especially from, as you say, having such a long-term relationship with, yeah, so it was not easy, and, you know, but we are getting there, and we're still in transition, believe it or not. It's been going on now for about two, three, how long has the schedule been? 2 months now?
Yeah, about 2
About
months.
2 months, right. So just wanted to update you on that process, because it was pretty scary when the system went down. Chairman, you had mentioned about the Elm Street security.
Mhm.
We are in the process of getting independent cost estimates as part of the procurement process. It will be on the website and advertised probably next week after we get the ice in.
Nice.
And also you just asked about the financial compliance. It is actually on the website, and it's gonna close July the 13th to, for us to be able to at least get the responses in. We
Mhm.
decided to leave it out there a little longer than 14 days. I didn't think 14 days, in my opinion, would allow for us to get the most competitive responses. So we actually ended up putting it out for, right at 30 days.
That'll work.
So at Elm Street, we are advertising for new security.
Yes.
Okay, so what are we doing in the interim? Do we still have the same security company on payroll, or what are we doing?
No, we don't. We're making arrangements, some emergency arrangements with the local police substation there. We're trying to increase, their presence. We actually could not do the addition to the contract. We could have, but it kind of would have been in violation since we finna put it on put it out for advertising. We didn't want to give anybody an unfair advantage, even though they've been doing it now, from my understanding, for like, I think since 2012, maybe,
Right.
when it transferred from Ledick.
Mhm.
So they've been doing it out there for a while and with no contract. So again, don't want to penalize them for being, good partners, but we do have to.
We just want to be legal.
follow- Right, we want to follow
That's all.
procurement.
Okay.
I'm going to defer to the gentleman on the call in terms of development updates. There are a lot of, it's been moving very rapidly in the last 2 weeks. I think you guys got the invitation for the resident meeting we're gonna have at Sunset.
The 23rd.
It's right, it's gonna be at 9 and 6. I sent you guys a flyer, but I'll resend it as a reminder. But that's gonna be, a night, we're trying to get the word out and get a lot of participation. And, the Gorman Group as well as ITech have, in the last 2 weeks, had a lot of activity that I think you certainly need to be updated on. So that concludes my
I
portion.
had one other question.
Yes, sir.
On the finance board.
Mhm.
What are these consulting fees?
The only one I realized was, I remember we did, the lady that came in and did the organization assessment, that would be considered a consultant fee.
But you got a consulting fee for Elm Street, you got one
Mm-hmm.
for the vouchers, you got one for Stevens. I mean, what are they?
I'll have to, maybe, and I don't know, I'll have to defer.
It says budgeted or?
I don't know. It just says consulting fees.
Is it in the budget as consulting fees? That's what it's saying?
It's on the financial report.
On the financial report. That's the only consultant fee that I am aware of, and unless, because it was an agency-wide, strategy that she looked at, maybe, and I'm just guessing because I don't have it in front of me. It
Well, are
could
you
be that
referring
it's
to Ms.
spread.
Jackson's
Yeah.
Yes,
fee?
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
but that was back in,
November?
November?
October?
Right, you're
Yeah.
saying, well, I'll have to see exactly which line item, Chairman, and I will get with, Director Delaney to give an
and
explanation, because
who is advanced networking specialist?
Advanced Network.
Shannon of the final chapter.
Oh, Shannon.
Okay. 2040. Hold on.
Yeah,
Why
Shannon did.
are we paying her $2,500?
She had invoices in the pipeline, and so the only thing I instructed staff to do was to clear her out, just close her
Okay.
out. That's the only thing that I'm sorry.
Well, was it?
Okay.
She had invoices already in the pipeline with work that she had performed. One of the conditions of us getting her, contract terminated as quickly as possible was I did commit to giving her her final payment. So that could be, you know, she did.
A contract.
There was no contract.
No contract.
There was no contract, but it doesn't
She
change the
was
fact
incurring,
that
she was
she
incurring
was,
charges.
right.
Cost, yeah.
And so
But I'm sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead, Ms.
You
Peterson.
check, was the work done?
definitely.
Did you check the work, Dr. Drummond, before
Definitely.
you paid her, just to make sure that everything, I know you might not have been there, but did you check just to see?
No, definitely what she billed for occurred. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, it wasn't like we just gave her a go away and be happy check. No, it was definitely
Get
work
out of
that.
life.
I'm just trying to see.
No, that's what that is. I
Okay, and
did.
what are these bank fees?
Oh, now those,
Monthly bank is, they analyze our accounts every month. You see, we
And
have
they
several
very
bank
high.
accounts, so.
And again, that goes back to our earlier question of just justifying some of this stuff and
Mhm.
closing out some of this
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
And Dr. Jarman, again, the board wants to be clear of why we asked all these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
The fiduciary responsibility of this board is to make sure that we are handling the money appropriately. So I know it might get uncomfortable sometimes that we're asking so many questions, but it's part of the board's responsibility to make sure that our money looks like what our money should, and it's just not going for a peanut gallery somewhere that we know nothing about.
Yeah, because piggyback on what you said, at the end of the year, in my philosophy, if the balance ain't budgeted, if the budget is not balanced, guess what?
We're in violation.
Some things gonna get cut, okay?
You got
Let
to.
you know that right now, okay?
Yeah.
If it ain't balanced on
We in
December 31st, okay, some things will be cut.
Has to be, because we're responsible for a balanced budget.
yes. But back to I think what you've seen, especially with the arrival of the finance director, is that transparency and full disclosure has been our mode of operation. That is why I think some of these questions that you're having is coming up now when they didn't come up before. I think that you will fully agree that we've not tried to withhold any information from you. And it might get uncomfortable, but it's not something that we're not prepared to answer. Though we, in some cases, it's stuff that predated, but it's,
Sure does,
and we can, of course, try to correct it, but certainly we're not trying to, you know, hide anything.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
That 232,000 and some change,
Mhm.
was that the full development fee or was that prorated?
I'll have to defer to Tam. I think was that, no, it definitely wasn't prorated. That-
Meaning was it cut in
You mean,
half?
yeah, that's what you were saying, was half of it.
It's
The
split.
last one, Tam, that came in, was it split?
213
200?
Yeah, it was 232 and some change.
what was the question?
Was that the whole amount that came in?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it all went to CAHC.
Right. And same thing for the one we just recently got for 50,000 that
Right.
you guys, yeah. So yes, it was not prorated. It all went into the Central Arkansas account. Okay, well,
I'm done.
oh, okay.
We reserve the right to come back with something else that pops off at us.
I'm done.
My question, I guess, is on the finance, just because I don't know is, so if you got a negative balance, if you start with a negative balance, so we ended the year with a negative balance in some areas, how do you make that up? How do we,
You have to control your spending.
Right.
And cut. You have to cut.
And that is exactly what
The plan.
Director Delaney came with.
that's
last
right,
week.
yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
following.
he
That's when
clearly,
he
yeah,
presented those to us.
he clearly showed a plan,
Negative, right.
a plan to address that.
Now,
Talking to the
you
property
remember-
managers and those sort of things in order to
closing out some.
Yeah, closing out some of that. so-
And not only
Public
that,
strategy.
I mean, staff has been working behind the scenes on cost-saving measures that, you know, again, ordering of supplies.
Yeah.
You know, a fact that a lot of employees had, you know, laptops and iPads, you know, stuff like that. So we're going through and we're basically making cost-saving decisions moving forward that, with the hopes that we'll never.
Down the line, they'll,
Yeah, we'll get all
have
of that,
some
but
effect.
that, again, it doesn't happen overnight, but we're
No.
definitely aware and cognizant of it, and we're definitely making efforts to address it.
You know, Dr. Jarman, and also to staff, we realized that there was an inheritance
Yes.
of certain deficiencies in how the agency was run. And it did not go unnoticed to the board. In fact, it was pressed by the board that some of these issues be dealt with. But again, we got what we got. And with the awareness that we knew that some information financially was being withheld from board scrutiny. So when you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
And the responsibility of these finances still rests, rules, and abides with the final authority, which is right here at this table. And we just want to make sure that we've done our due diligence, because the door staying open is not about us. It's about each one of the employees that come in here, and whether or not they're going to get paid, because the first time a check bounced back in somebody's hand, there's going to be some upset at your door. And we're trying to
Gonna
keep
be
that
over
from
that.
happening. This is about keeping the doors open, keeping employees paid, and making sure HUD is not knocking on the door, and we get another individual who does what Dr. Drummond has done in the past of saying, I'm closing your doors. That's what this is about. So that's why we say it might get uncomfortable. It might make you feel like we don't think you're doing what you're doing, but it's just to make sure that we're doing what we're doing, because we are unpaid. We're not employees of the agency. So what we do is for your benefit.
Well, this might not be the appropriate time, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Did we ever think that you would?
No, we want to congratulate Ms. Candace. She has become tax certified, okay?
Yes.
And that was one of the biggest pushes that this board had wanted. I know we've been talking about it for the last 5 years, okay? But there's that educational money there to provide that venue, that if you go out and get certified, we'll reimburse you. So it's an incentive, but to say to Ms. Candace, yeah, job well done.
You did a great job,
And first time.
and she took
First time.
the entire, yeah, she took
First
the entire, the entire 80 modules. So that is not a small task.
No,
So
it's not.
We've sent her congratulatory emails and high fives, because it's a major accomplishment, and I appreciate you acknowledging that.
Yes.
Do we have any more employees who are
Would like to, yeah.
low
we've taken
income
it, yeah,
tax credit
yeah.
certified, or
I think there's,
who are up to become low income tax credit?
I'll check, I don't know.
No, I'm willing to tax certified, but not through here, but I do have my willing to tax certified.
Yeah, and I'm actually renewing mine, but
Well, let me ask you, not only low income, are any of our housing specialists certified either through NARO or any other housing agency?
our housing specialists in
Right.
terms of ACV, are you talking about in terms
Yeah,
of?
sorry, ACB certification.
Oh, sure. I believe that's one of the requirements, if I'm not
Yes, sir.
overstepping, Ms. Johnson. Isn't that one of the requirements
Yes.
for your staff? I think,
Yes.
not in LITEC. You're talking about in just their area. of
Are they,
expertise.
yeah, are they NARO certified?
I don't know who they get
Don't-
certified
Yeah,
through.
yeah, I don't know. I'll
Okay.
check, I'll check.
I know the previous administration that was over Section 8 did NAILROD
Mhm.
rather than.
Yeah, they're
They
NARO,
still
right.
recognize,
Yeah, they did NAILROD, not NARO.
Yeah. Okay, I can check on the certifications and see who all has signed up for any type of training.
Training.
And last question, and then I'll shut up.
Don't say
Uh,
that. Promise.
Are all our NARO memberships up to date?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were checking. I know you sent the email recently, and that was one of the updates, so we did check. So yes.
Because this year, they're, as a national board commission,
Mhm.
this year, they're going more toward a blended, meaning attendees, online. From a commissioner perspective, they're offering more classes such as budgeting, financing, and I think a new one on that is technology and how it affects the agency. So they're offering a lot more classes to be to get you certified, but you know, if you don't take them,
Right.
you don't get
Yeah,
them.
we did check, when you sent that email, we made it a point to make sure that, everybody, that our agency was, paid up, and we, of course, it has been, and then also for the individual.
Now, my wish, and I know that there's other wishes, that everybody gets certified, but we only have 2 certified commissioners here, myself and Commissioner Anthony.
Okay.
Lindsay is like in ethics, and so is Jackson. And our baby has all of her classes to be taken, but it's an easy certification in getting your ethics under your belt to get that certification.
Do we know when those next certifications will be offered?
When is the conference?
October.
October.
I want to say October the 7th, somewhere around
Thought it
there.
was
But don't quote me on that.
Now, and then what I'll do, I'll just resend the link to,
Okay.
because what you can do, Commissioner Peterson, is that you can actually sign up for, Elena will have to sign you up, but you can go and see all of the offerings when they have the courses, which certification is offered, but it's on the NARO website. And we'll provide you with the login credentials, so you can go in and look at the actual training that's available
Okay.
to anybody else too. We'll email that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, so where we at?
That's it, I'm done, Chairman. With my report. With my report.
Ms. Anthony?
You know, you stole my thunder with the employee
Uh-oh,
report.
watch out.
You jumped out there and shared the information about Candace. And again, we are extremely proud of her for pushing forward to get that done. I'm not aware of anything that's going on in the employment area, so we're gonna waive any report.
Okay. Commissioner Lindsay? You all right?
I'm all right, yeah. I don't
Mr. Jackson?
Let's see, really there's nothing on my plate as far as, the towers are concerned. We, going around, you know, doing our monthly, community board meetings. Cumberland, we had ours yesterday. Another note that, Gorman's Corporate has been in the building at, Cumberland for the, pretty much, first part of this week. I'm not for sure they're gonna be there today to finish up or not. We're doing our usual calendar for the month. We didn't get one, that's why I didn't bring it this time. I gotta get them, we need one. So, other than that, everything seemed to be quiet. Running business.
Now, was there a outage at Paris this week?
The AC without,
Was it at Paris? Because Paris was where we got the new
Generator.
generator.
backup generator is supposed to kick in after.
I think just that, well, because I think it happened in Cumberland too, but it was like a short
Yeah,
glitch. It went off and then everything came back on.
Came right back on.
But once they came back on, you still had to reset air conditioners.
Yeah, you got to research the circuit breakers, that's what that is.
Yeah, to go to air conditioners. We have a few people that they didn't know how to operate their computer, to the air conditioner, so they had the air to come in and, teaching people how to do the air controls.
Okay.
Because a lot of people get mixed up. They thought you turn it on cool, not knowing that all this is a change of is the boiler room, water. And so, that being said, a lot of that's being done now. I think they finished up at our building yesterday. And I think they still probably at Paris. Paris is better than the building, so I think they still have some air conditioner issues over there. But other than that,
Let me ask you, has Gorman told you how often they do maintenance checks on those generators?
No, they
How
haven't.
often do they test them?
No, they haven't. Matter of fact, like I said, I hope they are finishing up in our building today. And I was gonna talk to the corporate today. There's 3 people here, I think Sonia, Josh, and, I can't think of her name. It's the 3rd person.
Mr. Swinton is on the call, so if we have those questions, we can ask him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what, when we speak to ITech and Gorman, we have weekly calls. Part of the call is, of course, the development, but the other call is about property management. So they will have some input, because anytime we get a complaint, we try to go through the proper channels and allow them to address it, and we have been getting some complaints, just as you have. And we have several people that have called to the mayor's office with concerns, and we've made sure that we update and keep the, respective parties in the loop. So that has been some concerns, but we've been addressing them as we get them. Okay.
All right. All right, Mr. Swain, are you on the call? No.
That's there, go ahead, Barkley.
No, Swinton.
No, Brian Swain.
There he is, right there.
John Lerdahl is on from development.
Hey, John.
I know Brian has another call in a couple minutes here that he has to jump to if he's not on anymore. And then I think we have somebody from property management on as well.
Hey guys, sorry I stepped away and I'm back. Were you calling me? I'm sorry.
Just need an update.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Great.
Who was that, John?
No, that's
Oh,
Brian.
that's Mr. Swain, okay. All right, it's all yours, Mr. Swain.
Okay, I'm sorry, was there a question asked?
Yeah, I was wondering how often do you do preventive maintenance on the generators?
How we do preventative maintenance on a generator?
Yeah, how often do you test them, dry run?
Oh goodness, I would have to get back to you on that. Is anyone from our property management team on?
Yes, I'm, Leanna Ledette is on from Property Management. How you doing?
Doing great.
Good. Do you happen to know the answer to that question, or do we have to get back to them on it?
So I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Question is, how often do you do preventive maintenance on the generators? How often do you shut them down, the power to the building, and see whether or not they're operating efficiently?
I'm not sure. Yes.
My apologies. This is Miranda with iTech. I think Leanna, you're mistaken. Gorman, it was asking their property management company for the towers, I believe. Leanna is with iTech, Brian. My apologies.
Thank you, Maria.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna be
I'm addicted.
We will get an answer back to your next question on the towers. I don't believe that we have a property management.
Brian, this is Sonia.
Oh, Sonia's on, great.
Yes, we have a contract with Comfort Systems, and they come out and test the generators. And we pay for a quarterly contract with them to make sure the generators work and they are full of fuel.
And what was the reason for the question? Was there a specific?
Yeah, there was an incident last week where the power interruption. So we were just asking, we realized that in the last couple of weeks, we've had unbearable heat. And we know that generators and everything else has to work hard to keep the residents comfortable. So the question was how often. There was a short period of time, I'm not sure how long they were out. So we're just asking how often are they tested so that we can avoid the jillions of calls that are generated from those moments when it's out.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Well, see, in addition to, this is also severe weather season here in Arkansas. You might never can't tell when a storm pops up and it turns into a tornado. Just better to be safe than sorry.
Excellent. So it sounds like the answer is quarterly based on our maintenance contract we have in place.
And Brian and John, they just wanted a general update on the development activity as well. I've already mentioned the resident meeting, but if you guys can chime in.
Excellent. Yeah, John, feel free to fill in any blanks here, but as Dr. German did mention, we have a resident meeting next week, which is a required step. And it's part of the HUD approval process for RED. And so we'll be doing that on Wednesday, and we got final board approval from the ADVA board finally, hallelujah. And that took a lot of effort from a lot of people to make that happen, all the way to the governor's office on down. And so I appreciate anyone that's on the board and all that were helpful in that regard, including Dr. Jarman, is a huge help with that effort. And so we finally got that approval. We do have to go back to the ADVA board one final time before closing. And that's simply to sign off and approve the bond documents. And so it's sort of more of a check the box step in the process. We're going to be having monthly required meetings with ADVA staff between now and closing. Our targeted closing is going to be mid-December of this year. If we can't close it by mid-December, it's going to push into January of next year, largely because I've had specific deadlines and they all seem to disappear for the holidays. And so they basically don't close deals after about the midpoint of December. And so we're furiously pushing the architectural side of things forward to be ready. We have a commitment from Bank of America on both the debt and the equity, paying way above current market pricing. So we feel really good about that. We're really lucky to be in that position in this case. We're working on a couple of deliverables. We have to submit a package to HUD, which leads to what's called a concept call with our HUD transaction manager. And HUD knows that this is a high priority. And Tom Davis, who leads HUD at the national level, actually participated in some technical assistance with the ADVA board at our request, and put the whole presentation together to help create a pathway forward for this deal. But anyway, it's all cylinders. Everyone's from architecture, construction, development, and from the MHA staff are all working together in lockstep with HUD to try and get our financing closed by year end with the construction start in January. Any adjustments to that timeline, we'll keep you guys updated each month at the board meeting. But happy to answer any questions, and John, if I left anything else, feel free to.
And John and our Brian, we recently had the call where we went over the changes in the architectural stuff and how pleased everybody was with the cost saving, as well as implementing some of the things that ADVA had wanted, like washers and dryers in each unit instead of in a common area. So they did an excellent job. When we saw it, the improvements were tremendous. And so I do want to allow you or John to kind of do a really high level overview of those architectural changes that were made that were really, really beneficial.
Are those
absolutely.
changes?
So we were struggling. We're in a very high construction cost environment right now. We have very aggressive Section 3 goals on this project. We have Davis-Bacon, and labor and materials right now are off the charts in terms of the current marketplace all over the country. So we're trying to find a way to address ADVA's concerns about the cost of the project while not losing any quality of the project and really maintaining the quality of the design. I would say that if anything, we've maybe added to the overall scope, again, with the washers and dryers and the units, the big one. The key thing that we did to try and save money and get back down to our budgeted number is we essentially redesigned the addition. Whereas sort of the plans that we inherited from the architect had additions on all three sides of the building, the left side, the right side, and the back side. And that's just woefully inefficient. And our architects put their heads back together with the local architect and said, how can we maintain the square footage and maintain these dining rooms and all these other things we want, but come up with a much more cost-efficient way to do it. And the way they solved that problem is eliminated the additions on 3 sides of the building and concentrated the added square footage on the back side of the building, and then manipulated the floor plans around that. And we ended up with actually better floor plans, much more efficient costs, and maintained every bit of quality. In fact, had the ability to, I think, add some quality items to the scope of the project. So we feel really good about the architectural direction. We're going to present that direction to the residents on Wednesday and go forward from there. But thank you, Dr. Drummond.
The question is there a copy of the architectural changes that is available to the board for them to take a look at?
Sure, absolutely. We can send a PDF file to Dr. Jarman for distribution of the full board. And it'll be virtually what we're presenting to the residents on Wednesday.
No questions? I don't think.
You have any questions, Brandon?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Swain, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. And feel free to let us know if you have questions along the way. And we'll plan on giving you updates each month at the board meetings.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bob Gaines.
Lord.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Dr. Jarman. Happy to be with you today. I'd like to report that we have started for several weeks now the meetings with the lenders and investors. We are pushing to close the transaction as soon as possible. The holdup is going to be HUD. We have received a physical need assessment today, which is essential for the final presentation to HUD. That would probably go out today as soon as we get concurrence from the Housing Authority. So this week that application will be submitted. And then we will be requesting a concept call with HUD for probably second or third time now. And we'll see what is their timeline for the approvals. There were a couple of other issues that came up vis-a-vis the closing. As you know, there's a current loan on the properties, Madison Heights 1 and 2, which matures on July 9th. Target date for closing was July 9th. ADFA came back and said they will not be able to get their final approval before July 15th. So that created another issue. Then Freddie Mac basically indicated that they will try, but they may not be able to meet the July 9th deadline. We approached the existing lender to extend the loan. They have in concept agreed to extend the loan for another 3 months. Hopefully that will be sufficient to close in time and pay off the existing loan. So if that 3 months becomes the new period that we have to close it in, we would probably close by in October, but we hope that HUD will come in earlier. As soon as HUD comes in, we would be ready to close. And to echo Brian's concern, we went out for bids. We received bids. We looked at the construction costs. Construction costs increased by over $2 million. We had to do some value engineering to bring the cost down. We have submitted new models and new cost structure to Housing Authority for approval, and it works. Primarily, the only change that was made because we are capped on the source of finance. We cannot increase the source of finance, nor do we want to. So the only value engineering that was done was initially it was contemplated to change all sidings. We knew that the majority of the siding was in good shape. There are some damaged areas. So the scope changed from total replacement to upgrade, fix, clean, and repair whatever needs to be repaired to look as good as new. So that's the only change that was made. That change saved us enough money to cover the cost increases on the remaining line items.
Cost of the extension.
I'm sorry.
Cost of the extension.
Oh, penalties are the cost of the extension and who pays that? Because that's just the beginning of the list of questions I think you're probably going to get from the board today. Because it also looks like we have drafted a new deal based on property identification that should have been done at the forefront of this. So I can tell you that, you know, once you answer that question, this board has serious questions about what we've received with the inclusion of CAHC, who has the proponency of all the properties in their inventory rather than MHA, which we have been going back and forth about for the last 3 months. So I can tell you that what we've seen, and we've had our board attorney who's been drilling down in this process to take a look at it, and unfortunately he could not be here today, but we're going to put this back on his desk because it's not really documents. I mean, you just don't change a couple of names, move figures around and say, okay, we're ready to go, y'all, without there being some discussion and the legality of what it is that you're trying to propose to do. The other part of this is that we have requested, because of properties, and I see that there's input from a whole lot of folk, but no input from HUD. And that's what this board is waiting for, is some input from HUD, since these are HUD dollars that we're dealing with. And I look around at my fellow board members, and I can tell you none of them look good in stripes. So this is not a deal that any of us are willing to go to jail over. So what we do want to know first and foremost is the issue of you changing the loan. And Dr. Jarman, were you a part of that discussion in dealing with the loan?
Changing the loan?
Well, I mean,
The
extending.
The extension. That extension at this juncture is not an option. We're not even sure we would get it. We had to have it in order to close. Of course, I was involved with the conversation once we found out that we were not going to meet the July.
Is that the walk and done map?
Yes, yes. And so we have been in conversations once we realized we weren't going to meet the July deadline. And so I don't know that have we finalized that, Balkan, in terms of the terms and the basis points and how much the extension would cost?
The term appears to be, everybody concurs with. We do not have the final approvals yet, but it doesn't appear to be a problem. The fee for the extension is 50 basis points. As proposed, we have requested, we are trying to negotiate a lower extension fee. It's a difference of between $25,000 or $12,000, and the project will absorb that.
Yeah, I hear you say project will absorb that, but I see in your proposal there's additional, so I feel like we get that cost anyway. So when you say project will absorb it, it's like buying something and we know that extra cost is going to be there. But we've got overall concerns about this not being an MHA deal, but now it's an MHA/CAHC deal. And there hasn't been any discussion at the board level of the dynamics of the change, which we feel that the final authority is here at this desk, and that should have happened. So we're a little
Any tax credit project that requires equity from the equity investor. 99.9% of the ownership goes to the limited partner, and that is the vehicle by which the investor can put additional money into the deal. After the 15th year, they would exit, and you end up with all interest in the project. And that is typical across the country, and it's typical since 1987, I think, when the law was enacted. That is the vehicle by which this is done. So I don't understand what the question is.
The properties that were part of this deal were initially a MHA deal. CACH only had a part in the deal as the deal was completed. Now, go ahead. I'm listening.
That's correct. Any housing authority, anywhere around the country, where they want to rehab the transaction through tax credits, they are the general partner. They have the option to, after exiting the limited partner, to buy the project back and becomes their own. But in the interim, in order for the equity investor to put the money in, the vehicle by which they put the money in is by the 99.9% ownership of the partnership. So it doesn't mean you don't own the property. It means that in the interim, when their money comes in, they are majority owner, but they don't have any decision-making capabilities unless what is prescribed in the partnership agreement, which is basically whatever that the partnership does that would endanger their equity investment, they will have a say-so. Other than that, you are the general partner, you are the manager, and you will end up owning the project after they exit after 15th year. And that is the typical structure of these deals since 1987 throughout the country.
And again, because there have been many faces of this deal that has changed, I'm sure that you and Dr. Jarman and all the parties that are at the table with this will not have any problem with this board insisting that we have HUD to take a look at this prior to our closing it, to make sure, since we got into this point under the guides of folk knowing what they were doing and being a part of this, I'm sure you won't mind us doing that additional test on the project to make sure that we are doing due diligence, to make sure that we're not signing up with something that we lose what we already have, or it's just not legal to do this way, because we have concerns how we went from an MHA contract or negotiation to a MHA/CAHC. We're not going to say that we're the sharpest knife in the drawer, and that's why we're going to bring in a sharpener like HUD, since these are HUD programs and this is HUD's money, for us to be clear. And I'm hopeful that there's no upset to any of the partners, that we just want to be clear.
Not at all. As a matter of fact, not only we welcome the HUD's review of this transaction, as a matter of fact, what we are seeking from the board is your approval to submit the package to HUD, and they will have to approve it. If they don't approve it, there's no deal. You're all waiting for HUD approval in order to close the deal. So their approval of the transaction is basically needed and necessary to complete the transaction. So that there's no objection. What we are asking you to approve is submit the package to HUD for their review and approval, which is the same thing that you're trying to do.
And again, since we just got this a couple of days ago to look at the numbers and how monies flow from and to, again, and our board attorney is out today. Again, we would like at least some time to take a look at how numbers are being arrived at before we say, go ahead and submit it.
Sure. The only caveat I have is initially in 2016, MHA issued an RFP to select developers. Previous to that, they had another RFP, they selected another developer that dropped off. So we submitted our response to the RFP and submitted a proposal to finance the project. That submittal in 2016 was also submitted to ADFA. Subsequent to that, we had like probably 15 different iterations. Each time things changed. For example, in the middle of the game, we were getting ready to close. There was this lawsuit with the previous developer that delayed the process for probably 3 years or so. In the interim, tax laws changed. Income taxes changed from, I believe, 30% to 21%, which reduced the equity investment to the project. Now, in each of these different iterations, we submitted at least 6 or 7 official proposals to the board. I myself attended the board meeting twice and made a presentation as to what the plan is. Each time it was approved. We have done changes every time the landscape changed. We have talked to HUD. At least I was present to 3 of those conversations with HUD, telling them what the plan is and what we are trying to do. And we had their concurrence to proceed, subject to the final submittal, which we never got there because we had the lawsuit issue, we had the ADFA issue, and various issues. So we've been working on this since 2016. That is basically over 5 years. What I'd like to, it's very reasonable for you and the board wanting to delve into the numbers and be comfortable with. I just like to suggest to you that more delay we incur, we are probably not going to get more than 3-month extension. And HUD will take 2 to 3 months to approve. So I urge you to give us the approval to submit the package to HUD at your earliest convenience because we have deadlines that we need to meet.
There have been different dynamics even in looking at what we're asked to do with the 20% partnership and various other variations that did not come before this board previously. And while there has been conversation with various other partners, there has been no conversation at the board level. And certainly, again, there are different aspects of this new shaping of the deal that this board wants and demands an opportunity to look at.
Sure. It's on your prerogative. And just that the 20% issue just recently came up. That's a tax law issue. Basically, the acquisition price of the property from the seller, which is CAHC, to a new partnership whose general partner is CAHC, the purchase price is $9 million. For that $9 million, we get about $3.2 million, in case of MH1 I'm talking about 3.2 million of tax credits. The law states, again, I'm not a tax lawyer, tax lawyers can explain better, but as there is an identity of interest between the buyer and the seller, there would be a reduction in basis. In other words, instead of getting $9 million in the calculation of the credits, we would be getting $700,000 less because it would reduce the basis and would impact the investor. So they would pay less in equity. In order to maximize the equity to the development process, the tax lawyers came up with this idea that if we have another entity to be 21% partner in the deal, it is a silent partner with no rights. They may just be asking for some fees. That would allow us us to get $700,000 more equity into the deal. That is the purpose of that 21%. It's not a devious plan. It did not come from us. It came from the investors, and it's based on the tax law. If you have your tax lawyer look at it, and if they have a different opinion, we will be happy to oblige. It's not something that we are pushing or we are requesting. It is something that the investor is requesting to address the potential loss of tax credits, which would impact the project.
And certainly you and members of our staff have had the opportunity to have this conversation and get your clarity. And all we're asking for is that same opportunity. So again, we would, I don't see us, Mr. Chairman, taking a position on this document today. And I'm go pass it off to you as the chairman of the board for whatever comments.
I think we need to have some of those discussions.
Yeah, and I'm not comfortable with it.
And Chairman, actually, they have been trying to dial in. There is Maddie Jones about the 21%, because that did literally just come up. I just, in case, do you want to hold separate calls so you can have that discussion?
We don't need to talk to Maddie.
Let's make it separate.
Yeah, we don't need to talk to Maddie,
And,
not today.
at least allow us enough time, the board has enough time to digest
Yeah.
what has come forward. Because,
And why it's being
if
done
we
this
only
way.
talking $700,000, I mean, did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
$700,000.
What's $70,000, I'm sorry?
No, $700,000 dealing with this 21% ownership.
Sorry, Maddie.
I don't have any number from anyone for that partnership and what the fees would be. If somebody's asking for that amount of money.
No, I'm talking about in the deal, okay? You're asking that because you needed this other partner
Would say.
with 21%, it would put $700,000 back into the deal.
Roughly, it would not reduce the proposed amount. If you don't put somebody else in, it would reduce the proposed amount. Some estimate is 600, some estimate 700. I don't have an exact number from the investor as to what the impact would be. But it will have an impact by reducing the proposed amount by several, not seven, several $100,000.
Yeah, we need to talk about that.
Yeah, we need to talk about it.
Question.
Sure.
I had a problem over at Homes of Granite Mountain, okay? Young lady told me that there was nobody in the office, okay?
Again.
And her doorknob became unusable, which left her front door open. What are we gonna do about personnel at our sites that you're running concerning situations such as this?
Leanna, do you know why the doorbell is not working?
Not the doorbell.
No, her whole doorknob came loose.
Doorknob.
Doorknob. Do you have an answer
Another
to
reason
that?
why we don't want to do this.
I was on site to, well, I'm not at Granite Mountain, but I did get an email about that, and I did ask Jessica, who, when I called her, answered the phone at Granite Mountain, and she was sending her maintenance man over there.
Is there not any phone numbers put up to
24 hours.
deal with maintenance 24 hours a day?
Yes, we have it on our line. Once we leave for the day, it goes through a Rent Dynamics answering service, and the manager and the maintenance both get a call.
Well, see, I have a problem when a resident goes there and bamming on the door, and I'm hearing bamming, okay, and nobody answers. I have a problem with that.
And we've talked about that before.
Yeah, I do have a temp now in that office also that never leaves the office. She's been there since Monday, and the door was open when I went by there on Wednesday.
I'm talking today.
Today?
Yes.
This all happened
Okay, I
today.
didn't, okay, I apologize. I wasn't by there today. I was at Madison today. But I will check in on it.
Yeah, we have,
When we get off the call.
we have a big problem with that.
Yeah, we do.
Okay?
Bodkin, this is an issue with the management team of the properties that we continue to have. And it's very concerning because that's a safety issue and it's really an emergency safety issue. If someone is having to be within their home and they can't really lock their door. And if, in fact, I hear her say that I've got a part-time person who never leaves. Is she part-time? Does she live in the area, or what is that?
She's a temp, she's a temp that we have in the office that's answering the phones and in the office itself all day from 8 to 5.
I don't buy that.
All right, so we still got problems with your management team, Barkin, and the results. And again, when you're efficient, we don't get phone calls. We don't get phone calls. So, so when we get phone calls, we share it with Dr. Jarman, and of course, you get a phone call.
We'll look into it, thank you.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. All right. Randy, you got any more? Anything for our tech?
Beg your pardon, would you repeat the question?
Well, I was asking Commissioner Peterson, does she have any more questions?
No, sir.
Anybody else? No, sir. All right, Mr. Barker, we appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lowe, I appreciate that.
All righty.
Have a nice afternoon.
All righty. Mr. Jackson.
And we, might we
That's
say we're
Mr.
so
Myron
glad to
Jackson.
see you.
That's what I'm
We're
talking
so
about.
glad to see you, sir.
Telling you.
Feel like you be called to the principal's office right
I asked him, what is he doing?
Take time.
Unfortunately, or fortunately for me, namesake, I spent a lot of time in the principal's office. I'm no stranger to that feeling. But good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just gonna give an update. Obviously, thank you before I get started. Thank you for all those who sent kind words and points of concern and prayer on my behalf in terms of 6 weeks since my open heart surgery, and I'm doing quite well. I'm not 100%, but nevertheless, I'm doing quite well. Well enough that my wife authorized me to come down and do a little work today. So thanks goes to her that she let me come out and play a little. So, a good deal. In terms of overall marketing update, the team is still working quite closely with the leadership of MHA. There's a couple of things that are priorities for us. One being the rebuild and redesign of the current MHA website. We do know that there are some limitations due to some old technology, and we certainly won't beat a dead horse, as we've been stating for about a year now, maybe a little bit longer, that the initial technology wasn't designed to meet the demands of the current client needs as well as the direction that the agency is going. So a lot of things that this board is instituting, that Dr. Jarman is instituting, and many of the directors are leading, the current site was not designed to meet those needs. So not only do we have some pressing needs in terms of educating our various stakeholders, aesthetics of the site, but just overall backing in usability. So there are some things that we're going to be pressing to try to move forward to address that. But the task order was executed, and we're simply just waiting on the final authority approval for us to move forward. And we do have a timeline that we're hoping roughly about 12 to 16 weeks to have that site completed. The process probably will move a bit faster, but what we're trying to do that didn't happen in a previous administration is we're trying to work quite closely with all of the directors and their various functional groups to ensure what we've designed is going to meet their current needs. We've been working really closely with Director Johnson in terms of her needs in the Section 8 area. She and Ms. Dickerson, Director Dickerson, is going to be walking us through how there might be some additional needs, so we might have to adjust the site map. For those who appreciate the site map, we may have to adjust that, but we're going to be moving forward. First, before I move on to two, are there any questions concerning that first point of priority? Okay.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes,
as
ma'am.
we're dealing with the issues of call-ins and different voucher situations that we deal with, is there any way that what you do with the website will help with directing that traffic and possibly making sure that how we do business is
Yes, ma'am.
as efficient as possible?
Well, we've had some very, very in-depth discussions, Director Johnson, if I'm fair to say Connie, as much as she calls her office and cracks the whip, I guess I can call her Connie. She's cracked the whip to make sure that that is addressed, and I've been very open and honest with her and with everyone in this room. We've optimized the current site. Anything we do to that site moving forward could potentially cause the site to crash completely because some of the technology, some of the plugins and how it was built are just simply outdated. So one of the things that we were having some discussion was about the emergency voucher program that we've heard you guys discuss this morning. We do know that we don't have any major concerns about any failure with the website at that point, based on Connie sharing that it's going to be more of a referral program. So we don't see this huge increased demand and traffic on the site that we will have to try to manage. But we do know that just the nature of folks hearing vouchers, folks hearing MHA, there might be some increase, but we don't think it's going to be at a capacity that we should be concerned about. Connie has directed us to place something on the website that educates our potential clients that they need to be directed to these various partners. So what we suspect is that even if there is some increased traffic, it'll be redirected. So we're comfortable there. In the meantime.
And the same thing about the opening of the wait list. The opening of the wait list.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that
Yes,
was
ma'am.
something
Which
that.
way, are we talking both of them? Are we
I
talking,
think we're talking about
Section 8 and
ACB.
the
Yeah,
emergency?
I think, yeah, no. The
I say the
opening,
emergency vouchers, they will have a waiting list too.
yeah, oh yeah, so I guess, I
Well-
don't know, the emergency voucher is different, but.
Well, from
Right.
my
The
understanding,
wait list.
there's not going to be any huge strain on the current site based on the emergency vouchers. It's going to be something we're going to be really working. And if I get this wrong, Connie, please correct me. It's really going to be working with the partnerships more than anything. And so it's really going to be those third-party entities who have to define those and meet the levels of eligibility, so they won't be directly impacting our website. Now, from a 30,000-foot view, Commissioner Anthony, the site just needs to be rebuilt. So you say, well, how can we fix this? How can we fix that? You know, after a while, put enough duct tape on a number of things.
Sure.
At some point, you just have to say.
Chicken wire.
Absolutely. And we're there. We also know that, well, we've heard in many of these board meetings, client engagement. The current site was not designed to optimize client engagement. So even part of the site that we're recommending, how do we engage our stakeholder groups, the new site will allow us to do that with greater ease. So we know, again, there's just much greater demand, there's a more sophisticated demand that's required of the site, and we hope, I guess, next week or so we'll be gaining approval and we'll start to move on what we've developed, and then again we'll be working with directors to make sure that we've added the components to make the site meet all their current needs. Two, we've talked a little bit, or we heard your chairman just kind of flirt with it a little bit in terms of what is the impact of outreach based on the emergency vouchers. Connie has kind of directed our firm to kind of take an overall marketing approach in terms of how do we build a communications program, Dr. Jarman, that educates landlords throughout the region about our need. How do we increase capacity? How do we create an environment where landlords know there's an opportunity for their properties to become a part of our inventory. So we're going to be developing a communications plan that we're going to go out, and it's going to more than likely include some traditional, non-traditional, grassroots, and some partner engagement strategies where we go out and try to increase that number. Connie right now is working with her team to give, I guess for you, Dr. Jarman, what is the metric for success? The design group, we're currently at 6. We would love for that to be at 18, or we're currently at 1,000. We would love for that to be at 4,000. What does that look like, Chairman, in terms of the growth, in terms of landlords? But we know that that's going to be an ongoing need to continue to create that education. So we're working on that. We're also working with Deputy Director Dickerson to start to assess what are some overall public relations, ongoing public relations strategies that we want to institute for the agency. One of those being, it's old school, but it still works. Whether it's snail mail or digital newsletter that educates our stakeholders and our clients on what's going on. We know that many of our engaged clients and stakeholders will view this board meeting on live stream, but many folk won't. So we're going to be working on developing that tool. We're also going to be looking at strategies in terms of each quarter of the year. How can we take some of the functional groups out to work closely through publicity junkets, whether it's radio interviews, television interviews, interviews with print entities, which Chairman will be working closely with you to figure out where we can gain your level of confidence on how do we engage the press, with you being the first point of contact and then others in the agency as well. So we hope, fingers crossed, that we come up with a plan that you and the rest of the board can live with, but we want to extend that contact point where it may be one quarter where we're talking about what we're doing in Section 8, how that's creating value for the marketplace, and how that increases the quality of life for our clients, as well as those who might be in need of our services. So we've got several key marketing priorities for the next few weeks that we're going to be building out. And certainly I know each board meeting that I come to, I hear the birth of some new deliverables. But are there any comments, questions, or concerns?
We realize that the dynamics of housing is changing every day.
Yes, ma'am.
And those who are in need of housing usually go to websites of those traditional places where they would find housing opportunities, which would include housing authorities.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognize, and one of the things that our staff participated in a panel discussion a week or so ago, where there were some blended situations that came out, that our community is in greater need of education.
Yes, ma'am.
Part of the crisis is caused because they just don't have access to what's out there.
Yes, ma'am.
So the educational component of what you're going to create is important. The friendliness, which is the access that people will get, which was also one of those things that was talked about. How do people actually access what they're in need of? And understanding that there are non-traditional, they're the basis of why we have housing. Those people who don't belong to a COC or don't belong to this organization, yet they're in need of housing.
Yes, ma'am.
And the many other organizations out there that are also doing programs to provide housing opportunities to other folk. I know Dr. Jarman made herself available and Director Johnson to a 200-member group that did not have access to information. And these are the groups of folk who are eye level with folk, and they didn't know exactly what it was to tell folk. So these are the kinds of things I want you to take into consideration as you are looking at how the educational access awareness and if equity can be built in there, because that continues to be an issue for folk as they're trying to get into housing opportunities. Dr. Jarman also in her notes talked about the review of grant opportunities, and certainly we get those notices where there are all kinds of grants and opportunities out there, which is hopefully going to increase more traffic on the website itself, because you're creating opportunities if in fact we're successful in getting those grants. So all of those things from a board perspective are concerns, because these are the things that we're hearing from the general public, as sometimes we wonder if it's really a housing crisis, or how we're managing the resources that we have at hand, and who gets an opportunity at those resources. So all those things are our concerns.
Well, we're certainly going to try to address,
deal with that.
We're certainly going to try to address all the concerns from top down with the tool. But we always try to educate our clients that the tool is only as useful as those who try to educate folks about the tool. So one of the things that Connie and I have been talking about, she's been a huge champion, and certainly sounds like the board can appreciate, and I know you can too, Dr. Jarman, is that we've got to get the directors out talking via traditional and non-traditional media about what they're doing in the marketplace. we also have to own what we've talked about in the marketing efforts, own our own activities. One of those being, it seems pretty cliche, Commissioner Anthony, but if they're going to be housing symposiums in this marketplace, we should own them. Then we should invite as many partners as we can, Dr. Jarman, to attend those, and then whatever we decide in terms of those plenary sessions that we want to address. One of the things that we've got to figure out, are we going to be the market leader when it comes to addressing some of those positions? And then what do we do to reinforce that? So we'll develop the website, but the website is just a small tool in the continuum. It ultimately comes down to how proactive are we out here speaking to the masses? Because you're right, there are going to be many stakeholders who aren't educated on the specifics and may not know how to engage us. So as we start to talk about some of our earned media strategies for publicity, as well as some of our public relations assets that we create. One thing we've talked about, Dr. Jarman, is having the annual housing symposium, working with a lot of our stakeholder partners, what I heard Bob can say several times today in terms of our investor partners. We can also talk about some of our other partners who are servicing some of those subsets of the population who are in need, bring those folks together, and then we start to own that space again. So Commissioner Anthony, we're spot on in terms of that effort, and the question really becomes for Dr. Jarman and the new leadership is, you get the website done, okay, that's great, it's a great tool. But then how do you utilize a firm like the design group and say, how do we work in partnership to develop those ongoing communication programs? Historically, the way we've been used prior to Dr. Jarman coming on was, we had an event, go get some advertising, get us some people to show up. As I said before, we're really good at inviting people to the party. The question becomes, how do you create an environment where people are always constantly educated about the value of the parties we throw? So one of the things we're going to spend some time is talking about, how do we have a comprehensive communications program that's ongoing, that continues to educate all of our stakeholders about what we do, why we do it, how can you get involved, and the value that it brings to the marketplace. So we're spot on with that, but I do know right now, because it's been a priority for this board, we do want to get the low-hanging fruit addressed, and that's get the new website up and going, where we won't have any issues in terms of server or traffic to the site, as well as the back-end components that have been a concern of how do we manage data on the back end. So
one of the greatest examples of how impacting a good marketing job can be is what we did with the contractors. And I know that a lot of our new staff were not here for that effort.
Yes, ma'am.
When contractors and developers or developers come into our community and they're constantly telling us they can't find folk to do the job, that's no longer a reality in their minds, because a good marketing piece brought folk out of the woodwork. And that's what we're trying to say, that public knowledge removes all excuses. I look for these 86 vouchers marketed correctly, not to be there within a month, because we're at a point where that many people are in need. If Fred Love across the street has 26, 73, or whatever million dollars, and he's doing 5,000 vouchers a week. Those folks who come to us, those 86 won't last, I doubt, a month. Marketed correctly.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, I know we've had some in-depth discussion, Connie and I, about that in our team. We know again that we've got some mandates in terms of how that has to be, the implementation of it has to take place, but we do recognize that we still have a responsibility as an agency to have some overall marketing response. So we're going to be working through that as well. So are there any other comments, questions, or concerns?
Sounds good.
Well, good deal. We'll
Glad to
keep
have you
working.
back, Miles.
Well, I'm glad to be back. Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah, we'll try not to be there.
What are you doing here?
Hi, Dr. Jarman?
Sure, Chairman, as far as the actual transfer of properties, if you, we had an update in a couple of the sections that talked about, getting appraisals. Of course, the one for, was it Hyde Park that was disastrous? was at Hyde Park, when the gentleman basically just said he couldn't do the appraisal.
Right.
So, but we do have the one for Vernon Place. We did do the title search. It is already owned by the Central Arkansas Housing Corporation. I did get your email, and you and I have talked several times about this whole idea that I believe Bobkin kind of did not understand the whole the concern that you have about the initial ownership of the properties, and once they even enter into the deal where they correctly enter into the transaction. So we are working to get the meeting with the gentleman at the top of the line at HUD, with Mr. Davies and Mr. Burns, to address your concerns about that. Other than that, to be honest, there's been little actual movement. We're still working with appraisal and then working with the title company, but we haven't actually transferred any properties right now because Vernon Place was the low-hanging fruit. It's been cleared. And so the other is a little bit more complicated. We do have to make sure of the funding, initial funding source, to make sure that there's not any Section 9 money involved in those. And then once we get that cleared up with the local HUD office, then we'll be in a position that, as you say, we don't want to do anything and it not be in the, as you say, what is the term you use, decent and in order? So if I have to make sure that those properties are clear of any reverters, clear of any affordable housing constraints, and at that point, we'll, of course, also check in the PIC and look at the origin, and then we'll be in a much better position to, make a decision on, which, where, or how to transfer those remaining properties. But there's been no movement in the last couple of weeks, primarily because we have been, as Commissioner Anthony mentioned, we have been spending a lot of time on those calls, those development calls. And I would very much like you to get, updated on what these conversations have been about. So if we want to set a special meeting, please let me know. I'll be happy to accommodate that. I think that the only way that you're gonna get the information on the level that I'm getting it, but is to have some type of special meeting. I'm on calls at least 3 or 4 times a week for a couple of hours. So, that's not your role, I get it. I'm the person that's supposed to be, engaged in those calls, but I think for you to have the benefit of what's coming out of those calls and the impact on these transactions, you need to be updated much more detailed than what we present in the board meetings. So I would be happy to set up a separate call or meeting.
There definitely needs to be one without saying.
Yeah,
without a doubt. Because as much as we try to share with him the difficulty, and that's why I asked in the finance meeting, if you had shared with him that there is 2 different entities here, and you just can't change a name on a document and say, we're doing business. That's not what we're doing. And I don't think he heard that, because CAC is a separate entity altogether.
Well, I think he heard it, but I think he was worried about that $700,000 effect.
Well, you sort of changed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it went too many places.
Yeah.
And this is why I say, with our legal at the table, because sometimes I think that they forget that we do have legal at the table. And I don't want them to make a witness out of our legal by doing something stupid. But the bottom line is, there is 2 separate entities that he's trying to, I don't even know if it's legal for CAAC under its construct to be a part of a RAD deal. And that's why I said.
Oh, nonprofits are part of RAD, but they have to be in it from the initial stage.
And you just can't,
Now,
you can't
what
start
he talked about back in
shuffling numbers
2016, and see, we had that discussion. What that came about was, when the initial RAD first went out about the towers, okay? I don't know if you remember the conversation that we had. That got completed. But when the second round of development came about, we grandfathered it, we covered it, and I'm saying, no.
You can't do that.
You cannot do it,
We had that discussion.
Yeah, and then
But
they came back
it
and
went
told
through
me it
anyway.
was. Yeah.
So my thing is, Bobson, I don't think you
You
understand
don't get it.
how we got to where we are today. Because we wanted to put it out for rebid, we were overruled, but that's where we are today.
The other part of that is that the OIG in its investigation of the first Reagan tagged this board and the staff that was in place at that time and the HUD field office with not testing this thing right.
Right.
We ask questions now because we were hit for not having more information. And we continue to hit brick walls when asking for information that was certainly board decisions that were made by staff that we got penalized for. In the OIG report, it talked about ineffective communications from staff to the board. We are not overreaching. We are just doing what we have been tasked to do in these deals. We cannot allow the developer to make decisions about how we're gonna do business. This is our project. And when it comes down to, you know, when this is gonna happen, when that he can have all the timelines he wants, and we understand. That's why I said you should have no problem in us calling in HUD and them looking at what this is, and what the guidelines are to give us direction on how to spend their money. We're not doing that.
Well, I'm like this, if we don't need that other partner and it's gonna cost us $700,000, then so be it.
Well, I thought that what he was saying was that.
I mean, that's
But
why
he hasn't understood what we're talking about.
No, he hasn't.
He has not
He hasn't.
understood, and he kept skipping over the fence every time I'm trying to say to him,
But what
you
I'm
got
saying
two
is,
different entities here.
that, what he's talking about,
The
if
20%.
we gotta pay $700,000, fine, so be it. But I'm not looking to bring in an additional partner and give them, this is just like the Maumelle deal, give them 21%, and they may or may not ask for a fee.
Well, the other part of that is what happens to the development fees that are already in place and how they're being divided. And what impact is that on this entity? None of that has been taken. I mean, he's just driving the
I
bus
mean,
like
like
we
I
ain't
said,
on it.
if we got to eat $700,000 in costs, then so be it.
So there are too many
Then so be
unanswered
it.
questions. And we certainly want our legal in the room when that's taking place because Mr. Eddings, as you know, and the chairman has been drilling down in that deal to even look at it. My confidence in this thing is that it wasn't done right from the beginning. Because the first rule of thumb for a developer is to establish ownership. That was not done.
Well, who the players are?
It was not done. Because if he had established ownership, he would have understood that MHA didn't own the property. So that didn't happen. So like I said, but when you find out that this is a situation, we have to get better. So I can appreciate some of the delays, Dr. Charman, that goes along with this transfer of property. And the transfer of property is even bigger than what we talk about because by right, the towers in the deal go with CAHC. Madison Heights is already over there.
1 and 2.
And 1 and 2 is already over there, and so is home at Granite Mountain. So it says that.
And Elm Street.
And Elm Street. So it says that from this perspective, there's gotta be more conversation. Because at the end of the day, if one way or another, MHA loses those properties and those incomes, whether it's in the deal or it's over at CAHC. That's income that we gotta talk about. So, I mean, there has to be a special meeting at some point for us to look at the total overall impact of what's taking place in this particular deal. I know Swanton is just glad he hadn't have anything to do with nothing as polluted as what's going on with this other deal.
His is clean.
Yeah, his is clean, but we just got to have, and it's not a fight. I want to be clear.
No,
This
it
is
ain't
not
no
a fight. This is just a point of clarity that none of us had any control over it, manifesting to the issue that it is now. Because we asked the questions. We asked the questions. We're
In fact,
documenting.
we asked that back in 2016, when they came with this misinformation, we asked that this deal be rebidded.
Yep.
We asked, it's a matter of record, but they went on ahead with it anyway.
So, So now the bad deeds of the past are now becoming our nightmare of the future. So we just need to make sure we're clear. This, you know, and
We got to.
we say, we know you inherited this,
We got to.
but we gotta clean it up.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I will definitely set up a special meeting with ITech as quickly as possible, you know, circulate your calendars and see when you can have that meeting. And the 21% ownership, I think is a separate conversation from what we're just trying to establish the basis for how these deals and transactions started with the ownership of the properties. And so I'll send you guys an email and we'll set that up.
Okay.
Okay.
We talked about possibly due to the issue of what's going on in 601, we certainly would like as CACH to stay in 601, but if it's gonna cost us $5,000 possibly just for the cleanup, even though, Dr. Drummond, we know that there's enough storage in the building based on the asset assessment of the building, there should be enough room in this building where we could find places to store our file cabinets and those kinds of things. But just as a member of the CACH board, I'd much rather see us put that money in renovation than
That was just a back of the envelope estimate. It really, I mean, that was the only.
Well, you heard my feelings.
Oh.
With that $5,000. With
There's a lot of
that
stuff down there, yeah.
I mean,
But,
really?
yeah.
I'm saying, wow. And the truth of the matter is, we all went over that. That's a hot mess. That's got to be cleaned up anyway.
Yeah, but we were lied to, okay?
Yeah, we were
lied to. We were
Yeah.
told that all them file cabinets, records had been scanned in, blah, blah, blah,
Yep,
blah, blah.
and we're on disc. Yes, they were. We got a tour and a walkthrough that all that stuff had been scanned in. You remember, Jane? Yeah, I know what you remember. That all those records had been scanned in
And been gone through and.
yeah, and they all that information was on disc. Cause you know that's the first thing that hit us in the face. All that paper, and we don't want a fire hazard because we got paper and wood over there and.
Well,
Takes
they should have had a retention policy that should have
they
been.
had
Well, that's the whole reason why they was supposed to be going through them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That was the whole reason.
Yes, ma'am.
When they went up there on the 4th floor.
It was assigned to a couple of employees. And we noticed that, you know, the renovation, see, all this stuff used to be up on the 4th floor.
Okay.
And all of it was told to us in order to get it, get the 4th floor where it is today. We're gonna scan, they had a big copy machine up there and everything was being scanned.
Okay.
So imagine our shock when we walked in there and that's still
All
there.
that paperwork.
So
Yeah.
that's, you know.
We'll definitely look in that because I was surprised. I did see a couple of boxes that were earmarked that said the towers. And so, again, I don't know if it went from the towers when they did that project to the 4th floor and then from the 4th floor down, or whether they put them there
Well, see, that's
without
the
the
whole point of them
retention.
going through. Those records, they may be 30 years old, but as long as they're active, we still have to keep them. If they're not active and they're inactive and they're past the retention date, shred them and get rid of them.
Right.
But that was a concern, and that's one of the reasons, because that's gonna be an ordeal over in 601.
Yeah.
The whole thing of having to go through that. The reason that we looked at, wanted to talk a little bit about 10th and Wolf being a consideration is because historically 10th and Wolf has always been rental property where business was conducted out of that. It's not like it's gotta be rezoned or any major piece got to be researched. It was leased to Children's Hospital at one time, and I think we had a lease agreement with someone else at that location. So it has always been a piece of property that we leased out.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any other surrounding circumstances for CACH to look at that piece of property, since historically, we would like for the both boards to, I know we went back, and we were just too trifling to go in.
That's the old admin building.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
right
I
behind
went in it.
Just
The
about.
only thing was one of the ceilings had, but other than that, it's in
Yeah,
good
right
shape.
behind just about.
So
yeah,
if
yeah.
we could, one day, get you to come to that side of town and, we go out and take a look at
Okay,
that.
yeah.
As a CACA or a MHA board,
Okay.
that, we can
Yeah.
look at that
It's in
property.
good shape, really.
So that we can, make, a move to that, piece. Again, and we're gonna talk more about that in the CACH meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think we already been through the next two, the vouchers.
Yeah,
and
the
all.
Yeah,
voucher
right,
and
the
the NARO
vouchers and the
conference.
NARO membership. Yeah, I'll make sure we send that email. Okay.
On the, did we get a copy of how much money is being written off in the delinquent account?
Yeah, he
Yes,
put that in the
yes,
resolution.
It's in the resolution. It's an attachment, several pages, about 4 pages.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the dollar amount back there.
Chairman, it's your pleasure to, are we moving on to the resolutions at this point?
Yeah, explain what the resolution is.
Yes, Chairman, the resolution 6779, as you know, we had tabled the write-offs several times. And we had gotten behind on actually doing the write-offs. This resolution is to actually bring us up current. It was one of the auditor's concerns that we had not done this, so we're bringing it back to the board. Most of these write-offs were people that were just uncollected rent, or someone had passed with a owing a balance. The amounts are not, I mean, they're high, but it's nothing that we could really do about it at this juncture.
Well, I mean, I thought they did a good job compared that 13,000 was for the whole year 2020.
Yeah.
Versus the revenue that came in against it.
And
That tell me nobody wasn't going nowhere.
Right, and we also.
We were in COVID.
Yeah, right, yeah, I was just gonna say, we hit the pandemic hit, and we were supposed to do this quarterly. And so that's why we got a little slap on the hand, and why we're asking the board now to bring us
Yeah,
Karen.
but looking at the amount,
Yeah,
I'm pleased.
Okay,
And based upon, the time frame,
Yeah,
I'm very pleased.
but that's what these charge-offs are primarily. There's some breakdown about the specific sites, but as you say, this is for a pretty lengthy period of time. And Mr. Delaney did go and get all the supporting documents, and these are legitimate write-offs that we need to write off our books.
Motion to approve, are you asking for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Now, yeah, because we got another.
You wanna go ahead and do,
got another
6780, I'm
resolution.
sorry. 6780 is just a matter of housekeeping. When we did do the scrub on the bank accounts, there were a couple of them that the only signature on it was, an ED from at least 5, maybe 10 years ago, Miss Shelley Effinger, was the only name on a couple of the bank accounts in signature authority. So we're trying to get that up to speed. And again, as part of our due diligence and scrubbing the bank accounts and going through what Director Delaney, I commend him for his effort, but we discovered that I think it was, how many, Tim, 1 or 2? We had 2 accounts that had no signature authority because the ED has long been gone.
Do we know what those accounts were used for?
It's for the operating reserve for Madison Heights 1 and 2.
Both, yeah.
Both.
Right.
So, this is 6779 and 6780.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We're talking about the operating fund from Madison Heights 1 and 2. Madison Heights 1 and 2 is now a dispute as to whether or not they belong to CAHC.
Well, like I said,
Yeah.
based upon the annual contribution contract,
Those signatures that are offered up in this should not be on there. That goes back over to CACH and its board.
I mean,
I want to table that one.
I'm trying to see which way
I
you're
hear what
trying
you're
to
saying,
go.
but the thing about it is the accounts in their original state, and they've been untapped.
Right.
And the signatures, at this point, are you saying that rather than vote on this in this forum, that you'd rather table it and pick it up under the Central Arkansas Housing Corporation? That your recommendation?
I'm a little bit concerned.
Confusion there, I think that's
that's cause, I mean, if we're.
Let me provide some. Originally, okay, originally they were under MHA.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, those accounts have not been transferred over to CAC yet, okay? So they're still, no, they haven't been transferred yet.
We just listening. I mean,
So
no,
they're
we
still,
just
they're
listening.
still, it's still
still
under the
under MHA.
purview of MHA, okay? Now, I can offer a suggestion, that, when, we know that Madison Heights 1 and 2 is supposed to be under CAAC. We know that. That, we come back with, we pass this resolution, come back with another resolution, have those accounts transferred to CAAC, then CAAC can put the names on it.
So what are we doing now?
But yeah, but I like to do it in decent and in order though.
But, and
what does
like
that
I
help
said,
do?
but
But
we don't know,
that asks for clarity along the way.
but we
of
don't know how
accountability.
many accounts are like that, okay? That's
Well,
why
we take
there's.
it over as it comes along.
We just taking care of this right here.
Yeah, we take it over as it comes along.
Okay, all right.
But see, with
All right.
this
Yeah,
one,
that makes sense.
Can
it makes a proper transfer on over to CAC.
Tiles.
Okay, and what, can we obtain the balances in those accounts?
Sure.
Already, we
Yeah.
did. Yeah, that was.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think,
That was part of it. You mean like right now?
No,
It was part of the report that was
Yeah,
given when we
yeah.
gave you all of the bank accounts.
Mhm.
Because these accounts were in that report. We just discovered that they didn't have the right proper
So this
signature.
just cleans it up.
Yeah, just cleans it up.
Makes it
That's all.
it flow a
Yeah,
little bit
just
better.
cleans
We'll
it up,
come
that's
back
all.
later on, after the transfer, and do whatever needs to be.
Mhm.
Gotcha. All right.
duly noted in the record.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, I'm sorry, we cleaning up and doing what's right.
Yeah, we trying to, yeah.
Duly noted in the
Yeah,
record
that's
that,
right.
that we
Yeah,
will
just
come back
wanna
and
make
clean it up.
Yeah, make transition on those, make it quick.
Okay. You need a
So,
motion.
I mean, when you've been in a mess
I've been in it.
as long as we have been,
You paranoid like a big dog.
sorry.
I got you.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
trying to cross that
Sorry.
bridge.
Yes,
I'm
sir,
with you.
yes,
I'm
sir,
with you.
yes,
Yeah,
sir.
right.
I get that.
And if you would note the,
I get
One
that neck-
time,
I get
not
that
twice.
neck pain.
Yeah, you can do me one time. but-
Yes, sir. We ain't going down that route no more.
So did you understand what I was saying, Dr. Johnson?
yeah, of course I do. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the Bank of Ozarks and the balance and where it originated from versus, yeah, I do. And I think that's the proper course of action. I would also like to make note that the names is gonna be, Tamara Donnelly, Andy Delaney, and Lisa Dickerson. As a practice, I have not made myself a signature on any of the bank accounts, just through finance and the deputy as a backup. So, yeah, I do. I think that's the proper course, is to go ahead and at least get the signature block on the account updated, and if you want to transfer it later, at least it'll be current.
Okay.
Right.
So we clear?
We
Sir.
clear, again,
I mean,
I'm just making sure.
yes, sir.
Coach,
Make it coach, yeah.
And I just wanna make sure the proper transfer is
Yeah,
done
yeah,
done
that's
right,
true.
that's all.
Motion to approve, resolution 6779 and 6780.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that,
Resolution.
that resolution 6779, 6778 will be voted upon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Do we need to have a motion to go into executive session? Dan, I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
It's been moved and properly second that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. We are adjourned.
Brandy, we do have a CAAC meeting.
Right now?
Right now.
Okay.